What if trying to save the person you love completely destroys you? This is the story of a toxic rescue mission and a final secret betrayal.
The moment my world shattered wasn't loud. It wasn't a gunshot or a car crash. It was the quiet, sterile hum of fluorescent lights in a hospital waiting room. A single, merciless buzzing note that seemed to vibrate right through my skull. Everyone thinks they know what a breaking point looks like. They imagine screaming, throwing things. But for me, it was just this awful silence, punctuated by the soft squeak of a nurse's shoes down the hall. I was sitting there, trying to piece together the last 12 hours, trying to understand how the girl I loved, the girl I had just rescued from a mental health crisis, could be the same person who was carrying a secret, a fresh wound that had nothing to do with the ones I had just bandaged. It's funny, the things you remember. I remember the plastic of the chair was cold and unforgiving against the back of my legs. I remember the smell of antiseptic and something vaguely like stale coffee. And I remember staring at her neck, at the faint, purple-red blossoms of betrayal, just peeking out from the collar of her sweatshirt, and thinking, how could I have been so blind? To understand how I got there, you have to understand the before. Before the hospitals, before the sleepless nights, before the lies. Before all of that, she was just a light. I first saw her in a college club meeting, one of those things you join as a freshman because you're supposed to. The room smelled like old books and lukewarm pizza. I was a work in progress. That's the kindest way to put it. My clothes didn't fit right, my skin was a constant battle, and my confidence was somewhere buried under 3 layers of social anxiety. I had just started my self-improvement journey, the gym, a skincare routine that was more than just soap and water, but I was at the very beginning of a very long road. And then she walked in. It was like the whole drab, beige room suddenly snapped into high definition. She wasn't just pretty. She had this energy, this laugh that made you want to be in on the joke, whatever it was. I was instantly, irrevocably gone, a complete goner. She became this quiet obsession, this secret I carried around campus. But she had a boyfriend, a guy who looked like he was assembled in a lab that creates quarterbacks. So I kept my distance. I played it cool, became the friend, the safe, reliable friend. We started hanging out all the time, study sessions in the library that turned into late-night talks, grabbing food between classes. Her relationship with the quarterback was crumbling, piece by piece, and with every crack that formed, she leaned on me more. I was her confidant, her shoulder to cry on, and I soaked it up, every minute of it, all while my own feelings were screaming just beneath the surface. The night it all changed. The air was thick and humid, one of those late summer evenings that promises a thunderstorm. We were at a small get-together, nothing crazy. I'd had a few beers, just enough to blur the edges of my own insecurity. We were sitting on a porch swing, the chain groaning a rhythmic complaint with every gentle push, and she just asked me, "Do you like me?" she said, her voice quiet, almost lost in the sound of the crickets. The world stopped. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. And long story short, we ended up in my dorm room and the world I knew was redrawn.
That first time, it was exhilarating. It was validation. Here was this woman, this genuinely breathtakingly attractive woman, choosing me. Me! The work in progress over her perfect-looking boyfriend. I felt like a king. I felt like I'd conquered the world. We had this insane chemistry. We liked the same weird movies, the same music. She was beautiful, smart, funny. She was everything I thought I wanted. I wasn't just in love. I was mapping out a future. I could see it all. Graduation, marriage, a dog, the whole 9 yards. But there was always this shadow. She wouldn't break up with him. She kept giving him chance after chance, and every time she did, it was a fresh twist of the knife in my gut. We were hooking up multiple times, living in this secret, undefined space. I was frustrated, desperate for her to just cut the cord so we could be real. And then, finally, she did it. She broke up with him. I felt this massive wave of relief wash over me. This is it, I thought. This is the beginning. But when I brought up a relationship, she hit me with the classic line, "I really like you, but I just can't do a relationship right now." Being the naive, lovesick idiot I was, I just nodded. I was fine with that. Totally cool. In my head, that was just something people said. A placeholder. It was only a matter of time before she came around. I was so wrong. See, I grew up in a pretty traditional home. The idea of telling someone you loved them while sleeping with other people was completely alien to me. It just didn't compute. So when it happened, it broke my brain. We were at a house party, the air thick with the smell of cheap beer and desperation. The bass was vibrating through the floorboards, a physical presence in the room. I was ready to go, and I asked her if she wanted to head out. She looked at me, her eyes oddly flat, and said, "No, I think I'm going to be busy tonight." Busy? The word just hung there, in the air. I pressed her, confused. Busy doing what? A small, almost cruel smile played on her lips. It was almost a laugh. Just busy. The implication hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. I made some excuse and stumbled out of the party, the cheerful chaos of it all feeling like a personal mockery. I walked back to my dorm under the streetlights, the world feeling fuzzy and unreal. She went home with a guy she'd met 10 minutes before. The next morning, I threw up. Twice! The taste of bio and shame. The beautiful future I had built in my head had been demolished overnight. We were in the same friend group, so avoiding her was impossible. We talked, and I tried to be mature about it. I told myself she had no obligation to me. We weren't official. She was free to do what she wanted. It was logical. It made sense. But it didn't change the fact that it felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest and stomped on. 2 days later, I was still a wreck. I asked her to lunch, clinging to some hope of normalcy. She said yes. We were supposed to meet after studying in the library. We were sitting side by side at a long oak table, the only sounds the soft tapping of keyboards and the occasional cough. The air smelled of old paper and dust. I glanced over at her laptop screen, and I saw it. A chat window open. A guy's name I didn't recognize. And the words, "Hey, did you shower yet? Is your apartment free?"
My blood went cold. It was like the library. The whole world tilted on its axis. A few minutes later, she snapped her laptop shut. "Oh, hey," she said, her voice breezy and casual. "Something just came up. I have to run. I can't make lunch." She gathered her stuff and left without a second glance. And I just sat there. I knew exactly where she was going. She didn't text for hours. I went to the gym. Not to work out, but to punish myself. I went to the heavy bags in the back corner and I just started hitting them. Bare-knuckled. I didn't care about form, I just wanted the physical pain to drown out the screaming in my head. The sting and burn as my skin broke, the deep ache in my bones. It felt right. It felt like what I deserved. Why was I so weak? Why was I letting this one person have this much control over me? 7 hours later, my phone buzzed. It was her. "Can you come over?" And like a dog on a leash, I went. I walked into her apartment and the anger, the hurt, it all just melted away when I saw her. We hooked up. Afterwards, we were just talking, sitting on her couch. She went to the bathroom, leaving her phone on the coffee table, screen lit up. I didn't mean to look. I swear I didn't. But my eyes were drawn to it like a magnet. And there it was, a conversation with the guy from the party 2 nights before. They hooked up too. In the 7 hours since she left me in the library, she had been with 2 different men. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady. I walked out of her apartment without saying a word, leaving my jacket, my charger, my dignity. She called me again and again, but I just stared at her name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button, and let it ring. The next morning, I texted her, "I'm coming to get my stuff." That was it. I was done. This was the end. I was going to be strong. I walked over to her place, my breakup speech rehearsed in my head. I knocked on the door.
When she opened it, the woman standing in front of me was not the one I had prepared for. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale. The air in her apartment was thick with the skunky, sweet smell of weed. She was high out of her mind, and she was crying these deep, ragged sobs. She told me she had a weed addiction. She told me her mental health was spiraling, that she was suicidal. And then she held out her arms, and I saw the fresh, red lines on her wrists. My anger evaporated, replaced by a wave of cold terror. I forgot everything. I stepped inside, my hands shaking, and I took her to the bathroom to clean and bandage her cuts. Then I drove her to the hospital. And that's where we came in, sitting in that waiting room under those humming fluorescent lights. As I was sitting there waiting for a doctor to tell me she was going to be okay, I noticed them. Just above the collar of her sweatshirt, the hickeys. They hadn't been there when I was bandaging her arms. A cold, sick realization washed over me. This wasn't self-harm. This was something else. I sat there for 5 hours, my mind a war zone of confusion, pity, and a rage so deep it felt like it was going to burn a hole right through me. When we finally got back to her apartment, she broke down again. She confessed. After I'd walked out the night before, she had called her ex, the quarterback, and they had hooked up. Again.
I felt nothing. I was just empty. The girl I had loved, the girl whose validation meant the entire world to me, was so broken that she was just ricocheting from man to man, leaving a trail of destruction. I stood up to leave for good. My hand was on the doorknob. "Wait!" she sobbed, grabbing my arm. "Please, don't go." She promised me, she swore to me, that she would be exclusive, that she needed me, that she was scared of what she would do to herself if she was alone. And what do? What does the good guy do in that situation? The person I loved was in pain. She was a danger to herself, and she was begging me for help. So I stayed. I chose to believe her. I chose to help her get better, no matter the cost. The next month was a living hell. Her health got worse. She started having lung problems from the smoking. I was the one taking her to the hospital every other week, sitting in those same waiting rooms, the smell of antiseptic becoming the perfume of my life. I'd be out with my own friends, a rare moment of feeling like a normal college kid, and my phone would buzz. It would be her, panicking, and I would leave, running back to her side. It wasn't just about caring for her. I'll be honest. It was also about fear. If I wasn't there, who would she call? Who would she end up with? My grades plummeted. I stopped seeing my friends. My entire existence revolved around her well-being. I was her nurse, her therapist, her 24/7 crisis hotline. Most of her own friends had bailed, unable to handle the chaos. It was just me, her, and 2 of her closest friends against the world. And after a month of me sacrificing everything, she broke up with me. She said she felt bad that I was doing so much and she was giving nothing back. She said she needed to heal on her own, needed her space, needed to be independent. I begged her. I pleaded. I told her I could be part of her healing, that we didn't need to end things, but she was firm. Maybe in a few months, we can try again. I asked for one promise, just one. Promise me you'll actually work on yourself. No random hookups, no weed, just get better. She agreed, and I left, feeling like I'd been hollowed out with a spoon. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I'd just randomly start crying in the middle of the day. The semester I had dedicated to saving her felt like a complete waste. That weekend, I went to a party, trying to feel normal. I ended up on the back porch, hyperventilating, having a full-blown panic attack. Drunk and high and desperate, I called her. I texted her. I needed help. I had no one else to turn to. Nothing. Just silence on the other end. If another girl hadn't found me and talked me down, I don't know what I would have done that night. A day later, she was giving me a ride home from the library. The silence in the car was heavy. Then she said it. "I need to tell you something. That night, the night I had my panic attack,
The night I called her for help, she had gotten too high and hooked up with a random guy from Tinder. I wanted to scream. I wanted to open the car door and roll out into traffic, but I just sat there, numb. I went back to my apartment and cried for hours. How did I get here? I had given up my grades, my friends, my own sanity for her, and in 2 days, she had thrown it all away for a stranger?
Then she called, and like the complete and utter fool I was, I answered. She told me she'd gotten her diagnosis back that morning, a whole cocktail of mental illnesses that made her self-destructive. She said she was going to enroll in a mental health institution, and she begged me for another chance. For the next 4 days, she mounted a campaign. She'd show up at my apartment in the morning with breakfast. The smell of bacon and coffee would fill my room. She showered me with compliments, with attention, with everything I had ever wanted from her. She was transparent, showing me texts from guys hitting her up and how she was shutting them down. And deep down, that stupid, stubborn part of me that still loved her started to listen. Slowly, I let myself believe it could be different this time. Months passed. We got back together, and things were great. For a while, they were perfect. I had my own glow-up. The gym had paid off. I was in the best shape of my life. I learned how to dress. I was confident. To the outside world, we were that couple, the one everyone looked at and said, they're gonna make it. People who knew me from freshman year would tell me how proud they were, how far I'd come. And she was the perfect girlfriend, attentive, loving, supportive. It was the dream I had had from the very beginning finally come true. But you can't build a mansion on a toxic waste dump. The past was always there, lurking under the surface, a scar. I'd hear a certain word, a word she used in those texts I saw, and I'd be right back in that library, my stomach dropping. I'd see one of those guys on campus and a hot wave of shame and humiliation would wash over me. I tried to fight it. I really did. I poured everything I had into the relationship. I planned dates, bought her gifts, spent every spare moment with her. I practically lived in her apartment. But at night, the ghosts came out. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, gasping for air, the phantom taste of vomit in my mouth. Panic attacks. It was this disgusting, visceral feeling I couldn't shake. The woman sleeping peacefully next to me was the same one who had shattered me into a million pieces. Then came the chance to study abroad for the summer. I was excited but nervous. She was nervous too, and I figured it was just the long distance. The moment I left, things got weird. The enthusiasm in her texts vanished. The calls became less frequent. The compliments stopped. When I'd try to be loving, she'd laugh it off, tell me I was being dramatic. That old familiar coldness started creeping back in. The paranoia started whispering in my ear again. What if she's seeing someone else? What if she doesn't love me anymore? Meanwhile, I was in a new country, and someone new was paying attention to me. A girl in my program. With my new physique and confidence, I was getting a different kind of look. This girl was open about her interest, and I'll regret this forever, but I didn't stop her. It felt good. It felt good to talk to someone who seemed to genuinely care, to be enthusiastic about me. As my girlfriend grew more distant, I talked to this new girl more and more. One day, feeling proud of my progress, I posted a physique picture on social media. A few minutes later, a message popped up. It was the girl from my program. A picture with the caption, "Open this when you're alone."
And right there, I faced a choice, a test, a moral crossroads, my loyalty versus my ego, my broken heart versus my integrity. And after a moment of hesitation, I gave in. I tapped the screen. Literally, the second the image loaded, my phone started ringing. It was my girlfriend. My heart stopped. I thought she somehow knew. But it wasn't that. It was worse. She was breaking up with me. The reason? The long distance. It was just too hard. I couldn't process it. All the pain, all the sacrifice, all the therapy and forgiveness and second chances, all the work I put in to rebuild us from the ashes, it was all for nothing. She was giving up. After everything I'd endured for her, she couldn't handle a few months apart. I'd argued for a bit, my voice cracking, but I could hear it in her tone. That flat, final sound I knew all too well. She was done. My multi-year relationship, the one I had bled for, was over. Just like that. When our mutual friends found out, they were furious at her. I never told them the whole story. I never told them about the cheating, the lies, the hospital. All they ever saw was me being a good boyfriend, me putting in all the effort. They saw her as callous, ungrateful, and cold. One by one, they all stopped talking to her. She ended up with no friends, leaving school more alone than when she first arrived. And to this day, no one knows my secret. No one knows about the girl from study abroad. No one knows that in the final critical moment of our relationship, as she was calling to end it, I was in the middle of my own small, pathetic betrayal. So here's the lesson. Here's the moral I paid for with years of my life. Don't take her back. Don't go back. Not unless you are 100% certain you have the emotional fortitude of a god. Because if you're not, if there's even a single crack in your foundation, that trauma will seep in, and it will poison you, and it will make you do things you will eventually deeply regret.